Pahalgam crossed a certain Rubicon. Here you have for the first time a deliberate targeting of tourists, Indian tourists in Kashmir, and that too with religious profiling. I think it crossed the Rubicon completely. Why only quote Osama bin Laden? Why not quote what Israel did last with the Hamas leadership, what they did with the Hezbollah leadership, and striking as far away as Tehran at that time? Everything is within the realm of possibility. The moment Pahalgam happened, within 2 hours we should have pressed a trigger. Things don't happen like that. It's important that we send home a adequate message, a kind of an action by which an element of deterrence is achieved. We did this in 2016. We did it in 2019. Now, I'm not sure that there is a government in this world which announces that they are about to strike at this particular hour, at this particular minute on its adversary. No government does that. No military ever does it in the world. And the public in India has to understand this. People are putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the government of India, on the Honorable Prime Minister of India, his team and leadership, on the Indian Armed Forces leadership, in a romanticized idea that a strike is imminent and a strike will achieve everything. Didn't the Prime Minister of India then call the Field Marshal and tell him to get into East Pakistan on the 23rd of March 1971? When did the Field Marshal finally agree to launch any operation? 3rd of December, 9 months later. In those 9 months, Pakistan was kept on tenterhooks throughout. What we will do, which I'm very certain, is that we will play out something which is calibrated in a manner that it has a terminal effect on Pakistan.
You're watching the Times of India, and at this moment, we are joined by Lieutenant General Syed Ata Hasnain, former GOC 15 Corps, and of course, Chancellor at the Central University of Kashmir now. So it's been 13 days since the brutal massacre at Pahalgam. There have been high-level meetings between the Prime Minister, the IAF chief, the Navy chief, and now even the Defense Secretary. The question on the lips of many Indians is, when will India strike back? Not if, but when will India strike back? Because that's what the country believes is going to happen. Going by your experience in such situations, what are the possible considerations on hand by the government?
Thank you, Aditi. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me for your program. And I think at a very important juncture. It's important for people with military experience to explain what the situation is currently. There has been a heinous act of terror. It has been provocative to the hilt. We have suffered this kind of a treatment from our adversaries for the better part of the last 36 years. We have reduced the strength of terrorists in Kashmir to just about 100 to 150 from the high of 3,500. It's not that India has not achieved its goals in Kashmir. We are well on the way to ensuring that Kashmir is well integrated with India. The Indian narrative is very strong in Kashmir, and I've seen this time, after this particular event, majority of the people have emerged and come in favor of India and the Indian narrative. Now, having said all this, it's important that we send home an adequate message, a kind of an action by which an element of deterrence is achieved. We did this in 2016. We did it in 2019. Those were calibrated acts which obviously had their effect, but did not adequately send the message home of deterrence. So what is probably being planned by the government of India and the armed forces is something stronger, something much more effective. Now, I'm not sure that there is a government in this world which announces that they are about to strike at this particular hour, at this particular minute on its adversary. No government does that. No military ever does it in the world. And the public in India has to understand this, right?
Hmm.
You have to keep your adversary on what is called tenterhooks. That's a part of strategy. No nation wants to go to war, but can achieve almost as much by keeping the adversary on tenterhooks. Imagine Pakistan today uh, with its reserve formations deployed, carrying
Hmm.
out missile tests, uh, facing the agony of a turbulent Western front with the Taliban, Afghan Taliban, facing a huge internal security crisis within Pakistan with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, also suffering the ignominy of an event such as an attack on or a hijacking of a whole train by the Baloch Liberation Army. With all this, and despite all this happening, now it has to turn its attention to the Eastern Front because of this provocative act. And obviously deploy its reserves, be ready to face the Indian onslaught. And in what state? In a state in which it is ready to go to the 24th time to the IMF for a loan of a couple of $1 billion to survive.
So
But
that
this has
literally.
to be, Aditi, this has to be taken into consideration. You don't go to war like that. You study an environment completely. No nation does that. You do it for your national interest. And dare I say today, the government of India is doing nothing more than looking at national interest. People are putting a tremendous amount of pressure on the government of India, on the Honorable Prime Minister of India, his team and leadership, on the Indian Armed Forces leadership, in a romanticized idea that a strike is imminent and a strike will achieve everything. We have to explain to the public with examples, perhaps. And I'd love to use the example of 1971. Didn't the Prime Minister of India then call the Field Marshal and tell him to get into East Pakistan on the 23rd of March 1971? When did the Field Marshal finally agree to launch any operation? 3rd of December, 9 months later. In those 9 months, Pakistan was kept on tenterhooks throughout. They had no idea what to do. They were going around the world also trying to make sure that India does not do something.
Hmm. Which is exactly what seems to be happening now. It's not been 9 months, but at least 13 days of Pakistan being on
Yeah,
tenterhooks.
if I may just go one step further and explain what is happening in Kashmir is not a conventional war like the one in Gaza. No, not in Gaza so much as in Ukraine, sorry.
Hmm.
What is happening in Kashmir is a hybrid war, a combination of diplomacy, a combination of economic and psychological warfare, right? Social turbulence, and combined with a pressure on the line of control. Now, these kind of situations, you don't necessarily respond unidimensionally by only hitting one missile or 100 missiles. You do it through what is called a comprehensive hybrid way of fighting hybrid. And that's what the government of India is doing at the moment. Some outstanding measures, like the Indus Water Treaty. Everyone was very apprehensive in the beginning that the IWT is the ineffective thing. No, there are lots and lots of means in the IWT to ensure you can coerce Pakistan. You can run Pakistan dry completely. A nation which is completely water deficient at the moment. So I think the government of India is being very pragmatic. I think the
Okay,
leadership is doing.
in the
Yeah.
last 35 to 36 years of this proxy terror that Pakistan has waged in Kashmir, India has never withdrawn from the water treaty, from the Indus water treaty. However, what prompted this action this time? How was Pahalgam different?
Ah, that's an interesting question. Pahalgam crossed a certain Rubicon. In the past, we have had incidents Pulwama, for example, was 40 policemen of the CRPF who
Yeah.
were men under arms involved in the counterinsurgency who were killed. Unfortunate, regretted deeply. Uri was about 20 soldiers of mine killed, unfortunately. Deeply regret that. They were all of this, the elements were from the military community as such. Here
Hmm.
you have for the first time a deliberate targeting of tourists, Indian tourists in Kashmir, and that too with religious profiling. I think it crossed the Rubicon completely. That is number one. I for a moment I think 26. We are fortunate that it's just been 26. It could have been much more. Had that place had bigger concentration, if this event had happened maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, when more and more tourists were going into Pahalgam, perhaps the number could have been even higher. And it would have been an even greater provocation. But this is a provocation by itself. And I think very correctly, the Prime Minister and his team are seeking time for calibration, seeking windows of opportunity. You see, a lot of people say that the Indian armed forces should have been ready to launch at a moment's notice. The moment Pahalgam happened, within 2 hours, we should have pressed a trigger. Things don't happen
Hmm.
like that. You see the circumstances, you see international opinion, you see what state you are in at that particular time and decide accordingly. This is exactly what the government of India is doing at the moment. And I think the IWT was a part of the calibration that it has decided to adopt. It's not a military measure, it's not even an economic measure, right? It's somewhere in the middle, a measure which is adequately sending home a message to Pakistan. And a lot of people are challenging and saying that it's ethically incorrect and legally incorrect, etc. But good, ethically, legally, even terrorism, which Pakistan has been sponsoring in Kashmir, is illegal completely. So we are well within our bounds to do this.
But in terms of military action, what are India's options if a decision is taken? What are the targets that India could hit? What does your experience tell?
Aditi, I'm a nationalist, and my service for 40 years has been devoted to the nation. And therefore, one thing which I will educate the nation on is that the Indian Army does not even discuss its offensive options in its within its own bounds, within house. We don't discuss it in the Indian Army, let alone discuss this in public.
Hmm.
This is a strong message I want to tell the people who are actually discussing options, etc. We don't do this. We have the fullest confidence in our military leadership. We have the fullest confidence in our political leadership. And I'm sure they will take the correct decisions. All we know is that they are looking for options, they're examining everything. One thing I'm very clear about, it's not going to be an irrational act, the manner in which Pakistan is used to conducting its operations. Pakistan conducted Kargil, if you remember, an irrational act which General Musharraf kept away from the government of Pakistan and decided to do it on his own, hoping to become a national hero, right? And you found what the effect of it was. They could not take it to the last at all.
Hmm.
Whatever, similarly, anything that they have done, any action that they have done against India has always been an irrational act, which they could never play out to the end. What we will do, which I'm very certain, is that we will play out something which is calibrated in a manner that it has a terminal effect on Pakistan.
There are those that have already advocated giving Pakistan a taste of its own medicine. That we do as a nation, that we as a nation allow, let's say, the Taliban or the TTP or even the Baloch rebels to take the Pahalgam revenge. Do you see that as an option?
See, Aditi, again, this is in the realm of what is called covert operations, right? In military terminology, these are known as covert operations, and covert operations are left covert. I'm sure it has to be, it will come to be. But one thing I'm sure, there is a passionate desire among all these groups in Pakistan to wreak revenge on the Pakistan army. And I'm sure they will find the various means to do it, even without the sponsorship from the Indian side.
You know, it's an open secret that Pakistan army is sheltering the Pahalgam terror mastermind Hafiz Saeed in Lahore, for instance. Reports suggest he lives in a very crowded neighborhood, that the Pakistan army has increased his security multifold since the Pahalgam attack and whatnot. What options does India have? You know, it's been done before. There has been an American military move to take out Osama bin Laden, let's say, from Pakistan itself. Why not India do something similar? What stops us?
Why only quote Osama bin Laden? Why not quote what Israel did last with the Hamas leadership, what they did with the Hezbollah leadership, and striking as far away as Tehran at that time? Everything is within the possibility of, with the realm of possibility here. We have the technologies, we have the capability, we have the training, we have the resources. And I'm sure at the right time, our concerned authorities, people in positions of authority and strength, will take the right decisions and decide upon this particular direction of strategy.
Okay, there is no doubt that Pakistan is a rogue state by now. Apart from Hafiz Saeed, there is, of course, also the Pak Army Chief General Munir. He was the DG ISI when Pulwama took place, and is the Army Chief when Pahalgam is taking place. What is your understanding of his complicity in this entire attack?
General Asam Munir is a very strange kind of a personality. Much unlike his predecessor, General Bajwa, who very often spoke his mind at various events such as the Islamabad dialogue in a couple of years. He always somehow, while playing to the galleries within Pakistan, also included an element of finding peace with India, because he always strongly felt that Pakistan could not progress economically unless it came to terms with India. And that seemed to have been his area of focus. Asim Munir is completely different. He is a Hafiz, deeply religious. He is not from the mainstream Pakistan Army cadre. He came out of a different academy and a different entry kind of a level. Therefore, he is not essentially that much of a team man as the others have perhaps been before. Wants to stand out and show himself. He has gone through the ignominy of that incident on the 9th of May 2023, if you remember, when the house of the Corps commander in Lahore was raided by a mob, right? It is under his command that it happened. It's under his command that the Baluch Liberation Army has hijacked a full train. So obviously, Asim Munir is suffering from a huge problem of self-esteem at the moment, and wanted perhaps to do something, an act which would show him to be a true leader, a true warrior. That he would do such a heinous act was unexpected even by me. That he would do racial profiling or advise terrorists to do racial profiling. The NIA's initial report seems to clearly point out a complicity between the Pakistan Army, the ISI, and the Lashkar-e-Toiba with its euphemism, that is the Resistance Front, the TRF. So this is the element which has come together to do this. This is essentially the deep state. And obviously, Asim Munir is the deepest element in the deep state, who runs this entire thing. There have been chiefs before who have done various acts, but have not stooped down to this kind of a level. And I think the combination of his speech to the diaspora, Pakistani diaspora, which was an absolutely deplorable speech, something which it was on the lines of a hate
Yeah.
speech, and then combined with a act of hatred, such as the crime which he's done in Pahalgam, is actually sufficient to put him in the dock internationally. We need to actually play this out much more internationally and tell the international community, here is a man who's actually a war criminal who should be put in the dock and tried. So
No,
I
interesting
think
that you, yeah, interesting that you bring up the international community, sir, because that's where I'm going. Uh, the kind of response to this attack, to the Pahalgam attack from the world, do you see? Uh, could there have been better support for India?
I honestly feel that the West does not have much of an idea of what is happening in this part of the world.
Clearly,
Right? Gaza and Ukraine have hogged the headlines for the better part of the last 2 to 3 years, Ukraine 3 years almost. And as a result, no one really knows what this is. Kashmir, oh, Kashmir is a lovely place, full of snow, lots of good
mm,
ski slopes. There are some terrorists, we are told. That's the kind of attitude that people have internationally. When an event such as this takes place, that is why I always say that perhaps India needs to play out its narrative internationally to a greater degree and sort of inform the world much better. Now that Pakistan seems to have abrogated or moved out of the Shimla Accord, this whole
mm,
business of bilateralism is now dead. We can talk. Earlier there was a stance that we always felt that India should not internationalize the issue because it's not in our
between,
favor because it's against the Shimla Agreement and things like that. I think the time has come when we should be speaking about this at all the important strategic capitals of the world, from Sydney to New York, and
you know,
educating people on this.
Pakistani leaders, in fact, have gone on the offensive over the last several days, predicting an Indian strike, predicting that India is going to strike us, literally appealing to the international community, uh, almost begging Trump to intervene, to Putin to intervene. Iran is already given out a message to de-escalate. What is the Pakistani strategy, or rather the Pakistani deep state strategy, given the noise that you're hearing from that part of the border?
The elements in Pakistan who understand this better know fully well that they don't have the capacity today to contest. Should there be a contestation, a conventional military contestation, Pakistan, to my mind, cannot last more than a couple of days. After all, wars are not fought just with weapons, they're also fought with economic backing. And that is
Hmm.
something that Pakistan does not have. And if it
Right.
expects that China is going to, sort of underwrite its war efforts, then that is got to start thinking again. So those who are aware of all this are the ones who are going around and speaking about it to the international community and telling them to intervene, to convince India to stop, put an end to this, because they too know. For example, people should know that Pakistan sold $650 million worth of ammunition,
Knew
artillery
it.
ammunition, to Ukraine at the behest
Yeah.
of the United States just a year ago. It does not have the war wastage reserves required to fight a war with artillery, and without artillery, where do you go fighting wars? So these facts should be known to them, and they should realize it themselves that it's best to look at putting an end to this. All that actually is needed is a statement from the Pakistan leadership that here they regret this, and they hereafter this kind of a sponsorship of terror in Kashmir will not be done. That will become that will put an end virtually to this problem. Because the people in Kashmir are fed up, as we are aware of it. The people in Pakistan occupied Kashmir are looking at their own at Pakistan themselves, and their eyes are all towards Kashmir, where a far higher and a far better quality of life exists today. Everyone wants to continue with that quality of life and not have a return to what Pakistan wants, chaos and turbulence on the streets.
Right. We do see how the situation is, the other side of the border. But tell me, sir, you said you talked about not the China factor, which is a big factor because China has always stood, at least on the face of it, they've stood by Pakistan and they've sort of been there, all weather friend, so to speak. Now,
It's the question of military support, which is what everyone should be interested in. Can China do something in Leh Ladakh to create a second front, a northern front, right? Uh, you have got the Ladakh front there. The Indian army is well deployed there. Its reserves are well intact out there. I don't think if China has to do anything provocative, if you remember way back in 2020 also, the provocative act was the training which was done in the depth areas converted from an exercise into an operational maneuver to come to
yeah,
the front. Can that kind of a thing happen? Well, bits and pieces of it can happen, right? But I think India has done what is called re-orbiting, or the order of battle has been created in such a way that we can take on both fronts. I don't think the northern front will get activated, although we will always have to remain prepared to be there and ensure that it is not activated.
but you're saying that India and the Indian defense forces are well prepared to tackle both fronts in case that situation comes about. Let's talk about the US response so far. US has called on India to ensure its responses don't lead to a larger regional conflict. You are an experienced military man, sir. How would you read that response? Is the US saying, go ahead, hit Pakistan, but do limited strikes so that others in the region don't get into the field with Pakistan?
You read it quite well, I must say, Aditi. What the United States probably should be worried about is an all-out war. And that would mean a potential collapse of the Pakistani defensive system, and then the threat of the possibility of a nuclear option. That is what worries the Americans. That what worries the international community. But India is fully responsible. The Indian leadership, political and military leadership, is fully conscious of this, fully aware. These situations have been war gamed any number of times, and the United States can remain assured that whatever India does in a calibrated way will be to its interests, India's interests. And I don't foresee India's interests of a nuclear exchange at all. So I don't think the situation can go to that level.
Got it. And what about de-escalation? Do you see that happening perhaps? Because we see Russia, Saudi, Iran, even US all having urged de-escalation. Some are even trying to mediate.
Um, I personally would not foresee a de escalation immediately without some kind of an Indian retribution. And I think this thing will stretch out for some time, because time here is a weapon by itself. The longer that we keep the Pakistan armed forces on tenterhooks, deployed and redeployed, a defender on the other side will do much more, will take probably far more precautions and activates its defenses much more than what a potential aggressor, which is we, in this case, will take. All we need to do is to move of odd formation here and there, do a naval maneuver, do a couple of air-related exercises. It should be sufficient to send home the message to Pakistan for the state of our readiness. So I think this will probably go on for some time, calibrated in that manner. He should be kept waiting for something to happen. If it happens, it will happen. Otherwise, de-escalation may take place at a later stage.
Okay, so you're also leaving Pakistan. If any Pakistanis or anybody in the Pakistani army is listening, obviously the Lieutenant General is also trying to keep you on tenterhooks there because, uh, and perhaps you're right. At a time when they are suffering such violence from Taliban, from TTP, from the Baloch rebels, engaging them here, keeping them, on standby on the Indian side of the border also is probably taking a toll, putting the Pakistani army under pressure as it is. So that in that sense, probably retribution is already taking place too.
Then I would end by saying,
Yeah.
I think that Indian nation should trust our political leadership and trust the generalship of the armed forces. The generalship, professional generalship, is far greater than what public generalship can be. So it's always good to believe in the people at the top who are professionals and who, to my mind, doing a great job at the moment. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely, you're right, sir. And war is a very serious business. The escalation metrics must be complete, isn't it?
absolutely.
All right. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for watching.